a man can get.
Welcome back to First Things First. We welcome in one of our favorite guests, Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, brother.
See you.
Handshake, get that out of the way. Why are you shaking your head, CC?
I thought but I had nothing I can do about it.
I know.
No, you can't stop
Well,
that.
I'm a little
you can only try to
disappointed
contain
with one
it.
of your favorite guests.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
well, listen, you're my favorite guest, but I don't want to make
and
other
she
people
wrote that.
feel bad.
She wants America to know she writes her own stuff. She wrote that, Coach.
One of my top 10 favorite guests.
Hey, Eric, you're my favorite. You're right here.
Okay, good.
All right, let's start the program. Coach, we're going to start with the Steelers. You would think a team at 12-3 and locked into a playoff bye would be free of drama. But much like my circle of friends, Coach, you know them now. Marcy, Aviva, Dara, Marnie, you know the whole gang. Drama is all around us. And there was quite a stir in the locker room following the release of James Harrison and his subsequent signing with the Patriots. All-Pro center Marquise Pouncey was particularly outspoken on the topic. Take a listen to this.
He erased himself. He erased his own legacy. Let's be serious.
Erase your legacy, really? It's pretty strong.
You don't think so?
You tell me, it's your locker room. I mean,
Yeah, I would think so as a fan. It's crazy. It blows my mind. He wanted that. It wasn't like the team said, oh, we're going back to James Harrison. James Harrison wanted that.
you want it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to read the stories like it's something he wanted to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like, no, they got together and said, oh, we're going to go cut James. Like, no, that's not what happened. And he needs to come out and admit that.
There's some fighting words right there against a former teammate. What was your reaction to the general resentment towards Harrison from that Steelers locker room, Coach?
Well, I understand it. At this time of year, when a guy leaves and he goes to your potential biggest rival in terms of getting the playoffs, I understand how things unfold there and the feelings that are related to that. And then when he says that Harrison says the things that he says, which paints the Steelers organization, the head coach in a negative light, the guys are rallying behind it. And what's more surprising is that none of this had gotten out during the course of the season. Yeah. During the course of his time there, the things that they were talking about with him falling asleep in meetings, with him leaving the stadium when he was inactive, with him unwilling to mentor the younger players, that to me is more surprising that none of that got out. But I do understand the emotion of the Steelers players in terms of wanting to defend their organization, their ownership, and their head coach, and you appreciate that.
All right, well, let me just ask a couple questions for that. I think I know the answer, but I want to ask him anyway. Falling asleep in meetings, how often does that happen?
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. So even if especially from a guy...
Does it happen? Yeah, but you go wake him up and you get him to pay attention.
If you're on the game day inactive list, are you expected to stay at the game, or is it okay to go home?
No, you stay and watch the game. You're part of the team.
Do we know other guys in the league have been reported to have left the stadium? Yes, but it's not the normal.
It's not the norm.
And
it's frowned upon.
Well,
yes.
This is the thing, because if you're not playing, you're on the scout team. So you're still on the team. When you go through the playoffs, you get the Super Bowl, everyone gets the same reward. Scout team are starting quarterback and the head coach. So if you're not making plays, I'm either trying to help my team on the scout team,
right,
or when I'm at James's position, I am there 90% as a mentor and as a tone setter for the organization, what they would allow and what they won't allow. But one of my main responsibilities at the end of my career was to make sure that Randy Moss was going to be great. So when they drafted someone, as in J.J. Watt's brother, TJ, when he made the final day roster, when you are a veteran player and you make the final day roster, your whole salary is guaranteed for the whole year, all right, once you're a vested player. So now you're not playing every game. You know your role is to get that guy ready to be a star for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers veteran players did the same thing for James Harrison. So that's part of his responsibility. Now, a lot of veteran players, they don't feel that's part of their responsibility. And we saw with him, he didn't embrace it. He didn't help the younger players. But this is a part of what you're supposed to do and when you're in the twilight of your career, and you've had a career like him in Pittsburgh, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's what the question I wanted to ask you. Like, if you were, I understand Mike Tomlin's not the general manager, but I don't think they are bringing James Harrison back without Mike Tomlin being okay with it, without Mike Tomlin wanting him back. When you sign 39-year-old James Harrison to essentially a league minimum deal, a little over the league minimum, And you are the Steelers, by the way, who have an amazing history at that position, at linebacker, from before James Harrison got there, and they're trying to continue it with Dupree, certainly with T.J. Watt. One of the major reasons you are spending that money and using that roster spot on him is to show the young players how to do things, teach them.
Like CC said, he's got to be willing. He's got to have it in him to want to do that. And there are players that just
But
don't
no,
care.
Jenna. You don't keep a guy, or James has shown through the years that he was doing these things.
Okay.
And this has been a big part of the program for a long time. I remember with Bill Parcells, he'd call them hold the fort guys. And those are guys that have been very loyal to the program, that have contributed a ton as a player, who you may keep a year longer than you really should, but their role is to mentor, to set an example, to be in the locker room. You expect those things. Now, I don't know what kind of conversation Mike Tomlin and James Harrison had prior to the season in terms of clear expectations.
Yes.
And that's an important thing. You got to be able to have that hard conversation with the player and say, look, this is what we want you to do. We hope to get you 10, 15 snaps a game, if possible. But if not, we expect you to be able to do these things.
But also, Coach, in that role, if a young player like TJ flashes, which he did in the preseason, which he did the first month of the season, they haven't been good at rushing the passer the last couple of years. So this was a need. So when the kid flashes, transitions from college to the pro, whatever that commitment I made to you, it might be decreased based on the younger player.
Well,
And as an older guy, you know that. You know
Yes.
the way the league works. At some point, your time comes, and you have to transition out. And if you don't want to play that role, then you probably shouldn't have signed the deal that you did.
You mentioned hold the fort, guys. I'm going to bring up a name that I'm sure it's a guy you have a great affinity for. Mike Vrabel. So when Scott Pioli took over in Kansas City, one of his first moves was trading for Matt Castle. That didn't work out great, but he had thrown in to the Matt Castle deal, Mike Vrabel. Not because Mike Vrabel was going to be some great playmaker at that point in his career at linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, but because they were trying to instill a new culture of young players, and they wanted a guy who they could say, this is how you go to work. This is what is expected of you. And Vrabel has now transitioned to coach. He's coaching with the Houston Texans, and he's a coordinator candidate, if not a head coach candidate, very soon. Like, what's surprising to me about James Harrison is Harrison probably, I don't want to get in this debate, he's probably not a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He has Defensive Player of the Year award. He's probably the level right beneath that. But he absolutely could have been a Steeler Hall of Famer, a Steeler, whatever their Ring of Honor is, their all-time great thing because of the Super Bowls, because of the Defensive Player of the Year. And for him to, I don't want to say do irreparable damage, but to do damage.
Yeah, I don't think it's irreparable. I think this is a few years from now.
Forget about it.
Yeah, this will all pass. But you make a great point about Mike Vrabel. That's exactly why you bring an older player in. And Curtis Martin used to make the point all the time that the most important part of any child's day is the time they spend on the bus, because there's no parents on it. So the kids that are on that bus shape a lot of what happens, and a lot of things can take place there. And it's the same thing as a locker room. And you want some people in that locker room to help everybody else see the right direction.
And James Harrison was in a great situation because at his age, not only being coached by Mike Tomlin, because James Harrison is not a dude just going to walk the straight line. Like, he's been fortunate that Mike Tomlin has been the coach, and the culture that they have in Pittsburgh has led to him having a great career. But how you finish that career, Mike Tomlin's his head coach. Joey Porter is his position coach. So let me tell you what Joey Porter is. There was a clear understanding of what his role was. I know Joey. Joey is a good coach, was a very good player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't
What do you mean by that? You mean Joey's not afraid to tell him eye to eye, here's what we expect.
Yes, and that's what Pouncey was explaining. Harrison did this to himself. As a veteran player, you can do things to let people know that you're not happy, and you force the team to cut you. So that's what Pouncey was saying. This is what James wanted. He was active. He wanted to get cut. And veteran players, that's what ends up happening to them when they're not satisfied with that role.
That being said, Belichick wants a guy like this in his locker room?
Well, it's different. It's different because now
Because
once
he's here to help him do one thing.
well, once you leave the protection of the team that drafted you or the protection that you have a legacy with, it's different when you go to the next team and you either fall in line or you
On the plane flight to New England, all these guys do a transformation. They swallow their pride. Yes, sir. It's the Patriot way. They come through that front door.
And that's
yes,
it.
sir.
No more sleeping in meetings. No more leaving if you're
Sleeping in the
inactive.
meetings.
Okay.
That's not going to happen because they know they don't want to be the one that screws it up. You know, those
Yeah.
guys that come in, they've got an excellent opportunity to get a ring, and they don't want to be the one that's the reason they don't. Now, the important thing to understand here is he may not make it to the Steelers-Patriots game if those two teams play. This could be a one week situation.
I said that yesterday. It's a tryout.
Yeah, and he could be back on the street very quickly. There is no benefit of the doubt that's taking place in New England.
And
They
because
can't see Cook walking away.
because he signed, his salary is fully guaranteed, and because he signed with New England, they're not obligated to keep him for the rest of the season.
Right.
As a veteran player, picking him up late, he's week to week, check to check. So if his attitude, he better check his attitude at the door, because if not, he'll be checking out of New England next week.
I have one correction that they're just telling me now that he did make a mistake. I called you one of our favorite. You are actually my favorite guest on this show, television
Good. I'm
program.
glad we
So
got that
there
worked
you
out.
go. So we're nothing but fact-based. We're
Coach, you're
fact-based
shooting
around
up the
here.
charts. You're trending up,
Don't
Coach.
go anywhere, Coach. Coming up, are the Giants actually just where they want to be? Eli Manning might think so. It's next on First Things First.
She's just showing you that until she gets Danny Ainge on the show. Then you have no chance, Coach.